She heard the screaming. They was on the phone together, and she was like, I don't know what's going on at Yanni's house, but can you look out the window?
She called their mother and followed the boy to the home to walk upstairs to a gut-wrenching scene.
I just see like blood.
Well, investigators have been working inside this pond at William Redmond Park in Bensonville since about 10:30 this morning. As you mentioned, they're looking for 25-year-old suspect Janiya Jenkins. This is the last place he was seen. In fact, officers recovered his car here late last night.
I mean, yeah, every time I look at the window, I just look at the house and I just remember it, and I just think like what was going through those people in the house, like just the situation in the house. It hurts my stomach.
He hurt the community. He definitely hurt that family. I feel sorry for that mother.
21-year-old Janiya Jenkins and 10-year-old Eyani Jones were sisters living in a suburban community of Streamwood, Illinois. Janiya was the oldest daughter in the family and had been studying to become a nurse. She was known as a caring, responsible young woman. Janiya had an infant child of her own who also lived in the household. Eyani, just 10 years old, was a bright and playful girl who attended Parkwood Elementary School in Hanover Park. Friends described her as a really sweet, very playful child with a bright spirit. Despite the difference in their ages, their two sisters were very close. Janiya often helped look after her younger siblings, including Eyani, a 7-year-old brother, in addition to her own baby daughter. Together, they formed a lovely family unit, but sadly, it was within their own home that both young lives would be brutally cut short. On the evening of May 28, 2025, Eyani was at home on the first week of her summer break, happily video chatting with her best friend via Snapchat. Shortly before 8 p.m., their casual conversation was suddenly interrupted by a loud commotion in the background coming from Eyani's house. The friend later told investigators that she heard screaming and chaos during the call. Amid the background noise, Janiya could be heard begging her older brother not to hurt the children. In a panic, young Eyani cried out for her friend on the other end of the line to call 911. Those were the last words the friend heard from Eyani before the call abruptly disconnected. Alarmed by the disturbing sounds, Eyani's 7-year-old brother, who had been outside the home, walked in at that moment and encountered a nightmare. He saw his sisters gravely injured and their brother, 25-year-old Janiya Jenkins, in the midst of a violent rampage. The terrified boy immediately fled the house and ran to a neighbor's home for help. By a tragic twist of fate, the neighbor he reached was actually the mother of the friend who had been on the phone with Eyani. Gasping for breath, the 7-year-old told the neighbor that something horrible had happened and his two sisters were gone. The shocked neighbor dialed 911 at once, reporting as at the home and then rushing with the young boy back to the Jenkins family's townhouse to see what had happened. Venturing upstairs to the second floor, the neighbor stumbled upon a horrific scene. Janiya and Eyani were found lying unresponsive in pools of red bodily fluid on the floor of an upstairs bedroom. There were obvious blade wounds on their body, and it was clear the two sisters had suffered a vicious attack. The neighbor later described the sight as something she never witnessed before, with red bodily fluid everywhere and the two young victims motionless. While on the phone with the children's mother, who was working at the time, the neighbor relayed the devastating news. Both Janiya and Eyani were gone.
This neighbor didn't want to be identified but tells us she's a friend of the family. She says her daughter and Jones are best friends. They were on the phone, and around 7:40 last night, she heard commotion happening at her home. The last thing her daughter heard was the 21-year-old, Janiya, saying, "Don't kill the kids."
She heard the screaming. They was on the phone together, and she was like, "I don't know what's going on at Yanni house, but can you look out the window?"
Then 2 children who were at that home came to her house to say their 2 sisters were dead. She called their mother and followed the boy to the home to walk upstairs to a gut-wrenching scene.
I just see like and stuff, everywhere I see the oldest girl, laid out. I see the little girl, she laid out. I'm on the phone with the mom. So I'm telling her like, oh my gosh, like, your kids are gone.
Around 7:50 p.m., Streamwood police officers and paramedics arrived in response to the emergency call. They entered the home in the 1600 block of McCool Avenue and confirmed the grim discovery. The officers secured the crime scene and ensured the surviving children, the 7-year-old boy, and the infant were safe. Later, the Cook County medical examiner would officially rule the sisters' passings harms caused by multiple sharp force injuries. In an instant, a family had been shattered, 2 young lives lost, and their older brother nowhere to be found.
She was like a real friend, she was a good friend.
Jasmine Marshall says she was close with the 21-year-old victim, Janiya Jenkins. She came to the house in Streamwood this afternoon hoping to get more information.
He hurt the community. He definitely hurt that family. I feel so sorry for that mother.
A community mourns after a young woman and a little girl were stabbed to death Wednesday night. Denise Howard says 10-year-old Uyani Jones played with her grandchildren.
She comes to the house. She get the popsicles, the candy and stuff like that. She always called me grandma, always gave me a hug. One person hurt a whole community when he did that.
Investigators immediately publicly identified a suspect in the double homie, 25-year-old Janiya Jenkins, the older brother of Janiya and Eyani. By the time police arrived, Janiya had fled the house, however. With 2 victims gone and 2 traumatized young children as eyewitnesses, police quickly broadcasted an alert and began a manhunt. They warned that the suspect was likely armed and dangerous, urging the public not to approach him and to call 911 with any information on his whereabouts. That same night, law enforcement tracked Jelani's vehicle to the neighboring suburb of Bensonville, about 15 miles east of the crime scene. A preliminary report pointed to Jelani having packed his bags and driven to a park where he tried to sell his vehicle to people who declined. He then left the vehicle, which had red bodily fluid stains on it, at the park. This discovery prompted an intensive search of the surrounding area. Police agencies converged on Redmond Park and conducted an exhaustive overnight manhunt, with canine units scouring the woods, drones buzzing overhead scanning from the air, and dive teams searching a retention pond in case the suspect had entered the water. The park and its surroundings were lit up with flashing police lights as anxious local residents looked on, knowing an assailant was at large in their community. Despite these efforts, no sign of Jelani was found in Bensonville that night. He had abandoned his car, apparently to throw off investigators, and then vanished. Over the next several days, multiple law enforcement agencies joined forces to locate the fugitive. The Streamwood Police Department enlisted help from the Major Case Assistance Team, a regional task force, and the U.S. Marshals Service to expand the search. Jelani's information was distributed statewide, and tips and sightings were followed up. Nearby towns were alerted, and officers kept watch on transit routes, suspecting that he might attempt to leave the area. Meanwhile, the heartbreaking story of 2 sisters ended by their brother made local headlines, and the community remained on edge. Children in the neighborhood, frightened that the attacker was still free, needed reassurance from adults that this was a domestic incident and not a random predator targeting children. Still, The fear would not subside until the suspect was caught.
Well, investigators have been working inside this pond at William Redmond Park in Bensonville since about 10:30 this morning. As you mentioned, they're looking for 25-year-old suspect Janiya Jenkins. This is the last place he was seen. In fact, officers recovered his car here late last night. Divers search every square inch of the pond at Redmond Park. It's unclear exactly what they're looking for, likely evidence related to the Suburban Major Crimes Task Force. Meantime, searching the pond, getting the attention of anxious neighbors.
You just hate to hear when little kids are victims of crime. It's just very sad.
Investigators got a break, information that led them to the village of Downers Grove, a suburb roughly 30 miles southwest of Streamwood. And late that evening at around 11 p.m., they spotted Janiya near the train station. A team of Streamwood police, U.S. Marshals, and MCAT agents moved in quietly. They managed to take him into custody without incident. The 4-day manhunt had come to an end. Janiya was unarmed at the time of his arrest. Investigators immediately transported him back to the Streamwood Police Department for questioning. Detectives and prosecutors worked swiftly to gather the evidence needed to file formal charges. By late on June 3rd, the Cook County State's attorney had approved 2 counts of first-degree fatality against Janiya Jenkins for the passing of Janiya Eyani. He was officially charged and transferred into the custody of the Cook County court system. Public information about his personal background is limited. Janiya had spent part of his childhood and youth in the greater Chicago area along with his sisters. Some reports listed his most recent address in Bensonville, which is why police initially focused their search there. It appears Janiya may not have been living full-time in the Streamwood family home at the time of the incident, though he was there on the day of the crime. There have been no detailed reports of his employment or education status. As for criminal history, authorities have not released any record of prior vile behavior or significant arrests for Janiya Jenkins. However, since it is still quite early, that does not mean that they don't exist. In the immediate aftermath, police also did not provide any motive for why Janiya would perpetrate such a heinous act against his own sisters. Those who knew the family were left grasping for answers. Speculation ranged from possible mental health issues to a domestic dispute that spiraled out of control. But as of now, no clear explanation has been given. In going through social media and reviewing various public posts from the family, I have to be honest. This case left me a bit stumped. From the outside looking in, they appear to be a genuinely loving and tight-knit family. The mother, Janiya Jenkins, had shared over the years how much of a role her son Janiya played in helping raise his younger siblings. There are videos and photos showing him positively engaging with them, laughing, supporting, and being present. No, that's not to say that dynamics can't shift over time or that things behind closed doors always match what's presented publicly. But I think it's important that in telling these stories, I reflect what I actually found during my research. I'm not here to sway opinions, and I do hope that justice is served. Following his arrest, Janiya's first court appearance was scheduled at the Cook County Courthouse in Rolling Meadows, where suburban felony cases are heard. He was set to face a detention hearing. However, Janiya was unable to attend that hearing. On the night of June 3rd, he had been transported from the police station to Ascension St. Alexius Medical Center due to unspecified health issues. A prosecutor informed the judge that the defendant was hospitalized for undisclosed reasons, so the hearing was postponed. 2 days later, on June 6th, Janiya was well enough to appear in court, where the detention hearing proceeded. Under Illinois law, for a double homicide suspect, there was little question that he would be held without bond as he awaits trial. As of this video, Janiya Jenkins remains jailed and under medical supervision in Cook County custody. Community members built a heartfelt memorial outside the family's home in the days following the incident. Neighbors, classmates, and friends left balloons, flowers, candles, and stuffed animals at the base of a tree next to the townhouse where Janiya and Eyani sadly lost their lives. Children who knew Eyani wrote messages and brought plush toys, creating a small shrine to honor the sister's memory. Many of these children were her classmates and struggled to comprehend the loss of their friend. Grief counselors from the local school district were made available to also help them cope with the trauma. The community of Streamwood came together in shared mourning, holding vigils, raising funds to cover funeral expenses, and supporting the surviving family members. Janiya Jenkins and Eyani Jones were remembered not just as victims of a crime, but as beloved daughters, sisters, and friends whose lives mattered.
I could see her memorial from my window. Like, it hurts my heart really bad to just look at it. Both of them, like, it's so sad. It makes me sad. I mean, yeah, every time I look at the window, I just look at the house and I just remember it, and I just think, like, what was going through those people in the house. Like, just the situation in the house, it hurts my stomach.
Their story, while heartbreaking, has prompted an outpouring of love from those determined to keep the sisters' memories alive and to ensure that young Black lives are honored and never forgotten. May the family and friends of Janiya Jenkins and Eyani Jones find solace in the happy memories, and may their souls rest in perpetual peace. Thank you.